Welcome to the Gaslight Effect Podcast. I'm Robin Stern, co-founder and associate director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence and author of the best-selling book, The Gaslight Effect. I'm an educator and a psychoanalyst, but first and foremost, I'm a wife, a mother, a sister, aunt, and healer. And just like many of you, I was a victim of gaslighting. Please join me for each episode as I interview fascinating guests and explore the concept of gaslighting. You'll learn what it truly means to be gaslighted, how it feels, how to recognize it, and how to understand it, and ultimately, how to get out of it. Before we begin, I want you to know that talking about gaslighting can bring up challenging and painful emotions. Give yourself permission to feel them. Some of you may want to go more deeply with your emotions, while some of you may hold them more lightly. No matter what you're feeling, know that your emotions are a guide to your inner life. Your emotions are sacred and uniquely you. Respect and embrace them, for they have information to give you. If you want to listen to other episodes of the Gaslight Effect podcast, you can find them at robinstern.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you for being here with me. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Gaslight Effect Podcast. I'm really delighted today to have with me my colleague and friend, Christina Cipriano. And the reason that I'm so happy, besides it's so nice to see you and have actually time to be with one another, even if it is over Zoom, is that Chris has written an incredible book and has lived an incredible journey with her entire family and with her son. And her book is called Be Unapologetically Impatient, the Mindset Required to Change the Way We Do Things. Chris's son, sadly, tragically, actually has a devastating condition. And I want to say first that the mom you've been to him and the way you have raised your son alongside of his loving family, but giving him every opportunity and every moment of validation you could and every possible support, it brings tears to my eyes right now to think about it. And the way that you have managed your own emotions, bringing in, of course, our work in emotional intelligence, but the way you've managed your own emotions and not only stood up for your integrity and fought for him every step of the way, even when there was gaslighting, which I know we'll talk about, is just is so beautiful, and it nourishes my soul as a mom who grew up, who raised a child with medical issues, and I know people listening, just the beauty of your story and the purity of your love and devotion to Miles. Just that's how I want to introduce you. Chris is also, by the way, an associate professor of applied developmental and educational psychology at the Yale Child Study Center in the Yale School of Medicine and the director of the Education Collaboratory at Yale University, a consummate senior researcher who has studies finished basically the minute the data is collected. It's totally amazing. Chris is an award-winning scholar and an internationally regarded expert in the science of learning and development. She received her PhD from Boston College, her EDM from the Harvard School of Graduate Education, her undergraduate degree from Hofstra University, where she happens to be recording today, fortuitously. And she's published over 100 papers, commentaries, reports spanning top-tier journals such as Child Development and the Review of Educational Research, as well as media outlets including the Washington Post, the New York Times, PBS, and Education Week. Chris and I have written together. That was such a privilege. I hope we'll continue to do so as the years go on. A prolific scholar, a public voice, a thought leader, educator, speaker, Chris brings personality and her positionality as a first-generation high school graduate and mother of four to science. So I'm really thrilled to welcome you, Chris, and I admire you and respect you as a scholar, as a colleague, and so much as a mom. So please tell us your story.
Robin, thank you. Thank you so much for that beautiful and generous and heartfelt introduction. And I'm honored that my book has resonated so deeply with you on all of the different levels, from the science to the personal components of it and what it's like to be a mom and a momodemic and a warrior for our children. This book, my love letter to my children, my family, and our generation. It's the application of the science and work that I've been building in social and emotional learning and inclusion for the better part of nearly 2 decades now as I age myself. But I wanted to write a book that was for everyone. So I intentionally structured the book to be applied science through the form of storytelling, and it's short forms that you get on the train with me at the beginning, and we ride together through our learning and understanding, with the main characters being my family in the ways that we are engaging in real time. We start with the premise of have you ever heard the expression, that's just the way we do things here? Or that's just the way it is. Or, the individual version of it is that's just the way they are. And what emotions that brings up for you, why, in the face of certain types of systems and structures, those exist, and how can we apply the skills and strategies of emotional intelligence, gratitude, and your own intrinsic motivation, what I frame as your vantage point, to affect change in your everyday interactions so that the way we do things isn't a barrier anymore, but it is rather a all-inclusive and emotionally intelligent opportunity for how we move our world forward.
Wow. Wow. Tell us about your growing up years with the kids' growing up years,
Mhm.
and when you first realized that the world wasn't fair, the world wasn't kind, when everything didn't go as supposed to go, if you follow the ABCs the way they're
Mhm.
supposed to be followed.
Yeah, yeah. I'll start by sharing that, I anchor the experience of disability as kind of the way in which I have framed the science of the book. And I intentionally wanted to write a book that had disability advocacy and disability justice tenets to it, but was not a book for the disability community, because we all have each other's back, right? From one mom to another, like, we have each other's back in this process. What I wanted to do was shift the vantage point so that everyone could see the experiences of what happens when you deficit frame someone else there within. Okay, so with that in mind, so my firstborn child, Miles, he was beautiful, welcome surprise. He came into the world a little earlier and a lot quieter than we were expecting. And right from the get-go, I was concerned that something was wrong. So expecting to hear those cries, looking over at the table, he was quiet. His legs were straight up in the air. All of my mommy instincts were like, there's something wrong. I was told he hadn't developed as normal, but that he would be fine with physical therapy thereafter. And so I was actually, when I gave birth to him, I was doing my postdoc at Yale. We were the Health, Emotion, and Behavior Lab at the time, under then to be President Peter Salvoy, working with Mark. And so I am doing my postdoc in developmental psychology, and I'm have my firstborn, and I'm like, gosh, what I know versus what he's showing me is qualitatively different, right? And so I raised this with our pediatrician at his 8-month appointment, and I'm like, he's really quiet. I'm concerned that he stopped developing, and she dismissed me, and she said, "You're a first-time mom. It's what you do for a living. You're nothing to worry about. Your son is fine." Well, Robin, Miles had his first seizure at 13 months old in his crib. That experience forever changed me. And thereafter, as you can imagine, we shifted doctors at that point, but the experience of being gaslit by a medical professional lingered. So you fast forward, through Miles' experience, and I actually, chapter one is the journey to a diagnosis for my son. And my son has a condition called Phelan-McDermott syndrome. It's a rare developmental disease. It is regressive. So there's about 3,400 people in the world with the diagnosis now, presents with aspects of autism, epilepsy, fine and gross motor delay, as well as a number of other comorbid conditions there within. At this phase in life, Miles requires full one-to-one support. He had a feeding tube placed a year and a half ago because we lost the ability to chew and swallow. He uses an eye tracking device as his primary form of communication, which has been a light for us that I'm happy to share more about. But that journey and that experience, it shook me and shifted my perspective in ways that came out of the books and told a different story, that it didn't need to be this way. And that really is the tension that I hold across the science that I teach in the book, that the way in which we do things, and the way in which we position medical complexity, disability, and the way in which it's framed as a deficit, it's framed as a disadvantage in life, has created conditions around it that expect all of us to be patient with it, or that our needs, the needs of those with disabilities, just they must just take longer to be accommodated for. But it doesn't need to be that way. And that's where you can use the skills and strategies of emotional intelligence to recognize, understand, and then shift what you see and what you say to change the way we do things. And that's been something that I've had the privilege of getting to embody through my son's journey and through my I have 3 other children thereafter in their experiences. And we're very lucky that Miles is still with us. I feel the gift and privilege to be his mom every day. And I carry that forward in the book that I wrote. And as I refer to in the book, I call it living your love forward. And so my hope is that everyone who reads it will live their love forward.
That's beautiful. So can you give me a concrete example? And then I'll give you one actually, not even of my son, but well, my daughter was ill when she was young, but that of gaslighting for the medical professionals. But can you give me the like, what did it sound like? What did it look like for them to say something to you? And then importantly, since this is what your book is based on, how did you do it differently? How did you stand up to that? How did you say, no, 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 this is not going to be okay?
Right, right. So, early on from the initial kind of my maternal instincts were being questioned, right? I was being told to be dismissed, that I knew too much, that it was not what it was. And it really caused me in those initial moments to kind of question, like, oh gosh, am I overreacting? It challenged me to really need to think about, like, well, am I doing something wrong here, or are they making a mistake, right? And it took me some time to reconcile that. And I think that's really important because, although I do provide lots of skills and strategies in the book, I do talk about that we all need to find our own time for when we're ready to start in that process. So there's a processing time that's required there. But if you fast forward then to some of the kind of additional steps of different diagnoses that were occurring along the way and misdiagnoses there within, as well as the experience with my daughter Eleanor, who's also kind of featured in the book and her experiences within the school system and being serviced. When I was told to wait and to be patient and to, kind of consider that what she's experiencing or what he's experiencing is something that we can wait on, and we can wait until they fail or they show some other level for us to begin to track, as opposed to kind of taking that as okay, well, the doctor said so that's what I'm going to do. Rather, moving forward, it was well, why do we need to wait? Right. Miles' condition is regressive. So the longer we wait, the less skills that he has. What is that proving us at this juncture? And what are our opportunities to affect change? And when I think about this idea of waiting in the concept of in the context of gaslighting, so I use the word patient. And in many cultures and communities, patience is considered a virtue. And even in some of the sects of science that you and I work in, right? Patience is a virtue, mindfulness, John Kabat-Zinn, et cetera, right? But when you think about patient as a noun, we're talking about someone who's suffering in a system or someone who's being served by a system, served by a medical professional. But are we really being served while we're waiting, while we're suffering, especially if the system's been set up in a way where they're waiting for us to fail? And this is that medical model, that deficit frame in which most of these systems and structures are kind of situated within. And so when we can begin to see that, and that's part of what I draw attention to as we move through the book, if you can see the frame, then you can see the ways around it.
So tell us more about the frame you're looking at.
Yeah, yeah. So, I use the expression of this just the way we do things that, in many ways that when you hear that signal or that, that phrase and a version of that phrase, it's suggesting that your system, so if you imagine like a boulder in front of you, that's
Hmm.
basically what it is. But like, why is it that way? Who set it up that way? Did that way serve a patient or serve a system or serve a student or serve a family or serve some families at some point in time? And is it serving them now? Because a lot of our systems and structures, right, may have been set up with, I give people the benefit of the doubt all the time. Best of intentions, right? Let's assume most, if not everyone, has the best of intentions when these things started. But have we evolved through systems and structures in ways that are supporting our people, or are they just serving the system there within? So let me give you an example. So when students are showing that they're experiencing challenges in school, so you take it to the school system, and you have a child who's, maybe showing some signs that perhaps they're having some difficulty with math or reading in the school system. The education systems in the U.S. are structured where we actually want to wait to see the student fail rather than setting them up to succeed, to then go through the process of saying, you know what, let's evaluate if you would benefit from special education services.
So in other words, they wait until they're
There's a threshold. Like
right,
you have to, it's not just a let's put the supports in place. It's a let's wait until you've kind of fallen below a threshold to
right.
then evaluate how you and learn how you may best learn. Right. And that weight in of itself, that can take 6, 8 months.
It
The wait
also
list
sounds
for
crazy. I mean,
nerve,
it's
it does. And I was on one side of the IEP tables prior to becoming a parent. So I
yes,
was, in my training as an applied developmental and educational psychologist, I was doing clinical rotations as a school adjustment counselor, and I was in the school systems with all the kids who were othered within the US public schools. And I saw it and I heard it. I heard that's just the way we do things. I saw the framing and the phrase, and I thought, well, I guess there's kind of like no other way to do this. It kind of felt like it was the structure. And then when I was situated on the other side of the table, I realized that, gosh, these two systems are not talking with each other. They've actually positioned each other as opponents rather
yes,
than partners. And this is a huge problem, right? Because you and I know in our work that we don't need opponents in what we're trying to, support the lives of our children, our families. We need partners. We need
that's
people
right.
together, and that's where emotional intelligence comes in.
So, I'm thinking about, I know it's your interview, but I'm going to take the opportunity to share a story because I just want people to hear it as well. It's just another one of those, let's see what happens. We can wait this out.
Right.
And when my daughter was born, and my daughter is now 35 years old and healthy and happy, but when she was born, she had a condition where she couldn't breastfeed and she couldn't drink milk and but they didn't know what she had yet. So what was actually happening is she was born at 9'9", which is pretty chubby baby. And so when she wouldn't latch on or she wouldn't drink milk and she wouldn't take formula, they kept saying, well, don't worry, when she's hungry, she will eat. And I have pictures now of what she looked like then. And then I knew there's something wrong because we as mothers, we know. We just know there was a look in her eye. There was a way she was not latching on. And I took her to the doctor and the doctor said, don't worry about it. She looks so healthy. She's gonna be hungry and she's gonna eat. Took her to another set of pediatricians. They said the same thing. She's close to 9 pounds. Yes, she's lost a little weight, but she's gonna be fine. Then I took her to another pediatrician who was highly recommended for his diagnostic acumen. And I said, "There's something wrong," and he said, "Well, I'm not so sure. Let's take her for a few tests, and we'll see." And yes, she's not thriving well, but let's see. And somewhere in the second week of the let's see, where she was now, so she was hospitalized for a while. Um, yeah, no, she was a month old and it was like the third week of her life or something like that. And she was losing weight. And I just woke up one morning and I said, I can't wait and see. I can't wait and see. This child was like, she was like a dish rag in my arms. So I took her into the waiting room of the doctor and probably scandalized half of the waiting room because I just took my shirt off and said, I'm gonna breastfeed and you need to watch this. You need to see what's happening. And he did. And he said, I'm calling an ambulance. You're going to the hospital right now. But if I had waited the requisite till the next appointment, till the next, I don't know what would have happened to her. And yet I felt like I felt like, and I was made to feel by a few other people like that was outrageous. Who does that? Who shows up in a doctor's appointment and without an appointment and just like strips in the waiting room and does this thing? But good that you did that, but it's outrageous. Well, it should be not outrageous to be assertive and to say, you must see me. I can't wait till the next appointment.
Mhm.
So I mean, to the extent that you're saying that, like, don't be patient, be patient to a point, be patient to
Right.
a point, right?
Right, right. Oh, thank you for sharing that with me, Robin. And I'm sorry to hear about the experience that you all had. And it's really resonant with many of the stories I tell in the book, and then all the other stories I could have told in the book. They're within. You're reminding me of, an experience that I had along the journey of misdiagnoses when Miles actually ended up with a diagnosis of viral myositis. It was a very rare kind of virus that he had contracted, and it was like three doctor's appointments in a row, and I kept being sent home. And on the fourth or fifth day of it, he and they kept telling me nothing's wrong, he just has a fever, nothing's wrong. And then he woke up and he couldn't walk, and he just had like lost the ability to walk. And I was like, I called the doctor, and they said, oh wait, you have another follow up in 3 days. It's just the fever, it'll be okay. And I was like, I'm done. I'm done waiting. And so I went and I sat in the emergency room with him for hours and hours and would not leave until they did, another level of blood draw. I was like, there must be something else you can do. My son's nonverbal, and clearly he's having. And at that point, we didn't have his Phelan-McDermid syndrome diagnosis, but what we learned about his condition thereafter is that one of the characteristics of the syndrome is that he has a very high tolerance for pain. And so he won't show us that he's hurt, which you can, again, now think about that as a mother
My
of what
God,
that's like
yes,
when you hear that. And
definitely.
so I'm just like, thank gosh, that we did what we did when we did it. But there's another piece I wanted to kind of pull out of what you were just sharing with us about your experience, and part of what I've been championing within the book is giving parents and educators and medical professionals sentence starters and framing and language of what to say and how to say it to call each other in the interactions. Because the reality is I don't believe that anyone goes into education or medicine and any public service industry because they don't care about people. I really don't. I don't believe that. But I do think that along the way, something shifts and something changes in the way we do things and how we're socialized or trained, that we start to become further away from each other rather than being in community. And there's things that all of us can do. And so, for example, I share, start with an introduction that contextualizes who you are in that moment.
Hmm.
Like, I'm Chris. I'm mom. I will get down with this is my son Miles. I will crouch down because he's in a wheelchair. I crouch down, bring them down with us so they see a boy and not a chair, and so forth. And that's really, that introduction is really important, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm imagining you showing up in that doctor's office and having that moment. And um, as adults, as we age, our brains, they trick us. We become more inward leaning, and it's not anyone's fault. It's rather like our bodies are trying to become more efficient. We're getting smarter as we age, and what that means is that we stop seeing people as they are. We see them as we imagine them to be. And so if you have a highly trained, highly skilled group of medical professionals and the waiting room attendants and so forth, they see you walk in and they're like, oh, you're either that parent or a parent. You're that mom or a mom. You're that teacher, that student, or a student. You are indescript, or they have decided they know who you are. You Googled before you got there. You came in to start a fight, came in to cause a scene. They will, right? And it's not coming from a place of malice. It's coming from a place of efficiency neurologically, if we start there. And you can interrupt that. You can interrupt that with an introduction. You can bring in who you are.
I so love what you're saying. I have to interrupt you because
Yeah.
now on to my son who did struggle with epilepsy, but before he was diagnosed, he was seeing this doctor who he was a great guy and he really tried to help. When he found out that I was a psychoanalyst, I think his mindset changed. He started sending me books on conversion disorder. And he said to me, there's nothing wrong with your son. He's at a time in his life where he's supposed to be standing on his own 2 feet, but he's not able to stand on his own 2 feet because he's having seizures. And I know that you, as an analyst, probably are or just not really paying attention to what we all have been trained to pay attention to when he sends me these books on Freud, as if A, as if I hadn't read them, B, as if they had anything to do. And I said to him respectfully, you walk down the street with my son, and then you tell me that that's what I'm dealing with, because it is not what I'm dealing with. And at the time, one of the most helpful things, and I may have told you this in other conversations, was that I had the privilege of talking to another mom who had a son, who has a son, and at that time he was falling all over the place. And she said every doctor kept saying, I think he may be doing drugs and you don't know it. I think that he's just not, there's something wrong, but it has nothing to do with a seizure disorder. And she called me because she knew me through another woman I was mentoring. And she said, don't give up. They just are in their own frame. They're in their own frame because they went to medical school and they learned this and it doesn't fit into the frame. They're going to shove it into the frame.
Right. Oh gosh, I totally. So, I hear you on that, right? And so you can interrupt it though. And I think we all can interrupt. We can hold each other accountable. And so you can introduce yourself. You can lead with gratitude. So it's another huge piece of my book is start who you are and say thank you. Not, I'm sorry. Don't apologize for asking a question or a statement or existing or minimize, don't dismiss your kids, your family, your need. Thank you. Gratitude. Call in, right? State the fact. He's not walking. There is no ramp. She failed the test. Like it's a fact. It's not a question. It's not a open to interpretation. It is this happened or it's happening right now in front of you. And then I think, really the key here is the empathetic response thereafter. How can we help? How can I help? How can I support you? And, maybe you went into that right with like you have a whole set of solutions. You're like, I have some ideas here because of your professional experience and also like some of the other things you've done along your journey to get to that point of how you could help and how you could change this. Maybe you don't, but offering it
Yes.
is encapsulating it in empathy that we are going to do this together.
And I need you. I need you. Yes.
I need you, right? And our educators, our medical professionals, our industry executives, right? They can do the same thing by having the attention, so attending and the intention to shift their frame, to expand their frame, to see children and families and patients as they are, not as they imagine them to be, right? We can all be better at that. And in the book, I give examples about like I mean, I could have written a whole book about the wheelchair. Let's be real. Like our experience of becoming a family that rolls our son's wheelchair and the ways in which that chair and that experience and his socialization in it. I mean, who knows? I may end up writing that book someday. But I use examples of like the flight attendants, the theme parks, the like all the different places, people saying things to us like it's our job to shift the system. They're like, well, if you don't like it, you can call the manager, you can complain, you could, right? And what I talk about in the book is, but they have a responsibility, an opportunity, and I would say an obligation to also request and suggest change from within
Yes.
to make this better. Because it's a lot more powerful when it comes from within the system than outside it. This idea that like customer service is only the customer, right? It's a biased one.
Yes. And those small but powerful actions on a daily basis from everyone involved are necessary. So, Chris, how do you feel having written this book and um, what was the final I have to write this book moment? And then how do you feel having done it?
Yes. Oh, thank you. Well, the final kind of straw piece of it was the questions from my middle children, so my middles, as we call them. So I've got four children. They're currently now 13, 12, 10, and 6. And so I started, I wrote the book about 2 years ago now. And in the process of that, they were asking questions. So my middle two, Salvatore and Eleanor, and they're asking questions about like, why do we have to wait for another bus when all the other families get to go ahead of us because the bus couldn't accommodate, their brother's wheelchair. My daughter Eleanor asking me why I refer to her ADHD as a superpower, and that's how we've socialized her about it. And she had a teacher tell her that, well, that's a disability, that's an illness. And they're questioning, it brought me to a new level of realization, like why am I waiting to write this book? And I'll tell you, as a someone in the academic space, that I had this idea that, like, I thought about writing this book for over a decade, and I was like, I'm going to write this book when I go on sabbatical. Like, mind you, I've still not been on sabbatical, but I was like, I'm going to do this when I go. I'm going to do this when I go on sabbatical. I'm going to earn a sabbatical, and I'm going to do it. And I was like, what am I waiting for? Why am I waiting to write this? But I'm literally, like, manifesting. I'm letting the system manifest at the time. So that was really the piece. And then in terms of how I feel about it, well, it was absolutely terrifying. So when it finally went into production and I knew it was coming out, and my husband and my family and my best friends were all like, "What is wrong with you?" I, like, couldn't open my email. I was like, wouldn't look at I was terrified. All of my imposter syndrome was, like, all over me, of, like, I just put my heart on my sleeve and put it out there, and I wrote, like, a science book that's heart forward, that's personal. Like, I was terrified. And and then I've since kind of grown through, like, it's been incredible how it's been picked up. And I could never have imagined the reach that the book has had internationally, domestically, what's going on with it, the ways in which it's, like, planting seeds of hope and light, that all different types of people who are picking it up, who are seeing themselves in it. And my absolute favorite thing that brings me light and energy every day has been that people are finding me across the different email addresses and social media accounts, and I just get these messages, and the messages of what they found helpful, and, like, different aspects or different strategies within the books. It's a very strategy forward book. Like, they're like, I used this, I immediately saw this, I didn't know I could say that, I didn't see it this way. And, like, their notes of gratitude and about all different types of things that have nothing to do with stories I told in the book, but they saw in those stories elements of their own lives and their own experiences where that is keeping me going. And I'm so grateful that I took the risk and bet on myself and wrote the book. So I encourage others who are thinking about it to do the same.
Oh my goodness. Yes. I mean, to write a book that is based in science and also so open and vulnerable about you and your personal life is just, it does take tremendous amount of courage, and what a gift. What a gift it
Thank
is
you.
to people. It's really extraordinary. I'm so glad you wrote the book. How did your family feel when the book came out and it started to get a lot of attention?
Oh my gosh, they're so proud of it. They're so proud of it. Like, my kids, like Salvatore and Eleanor, have basically decided that they're, like, they treat themselves like superhero, like, characters in the book. So when they talk about it, they're like, "Did you read the chapter about the boulder? I was there with my bike." Like, when they talk, like, to people, like, we're at some of the event, like, and it's incredible. And, like, my son Salvatore was telling me how one of his teachers in middle school the other day just said to him, like, "Oh, I read your mom's book." And so he was like, they're just so excited about it. And my parents are unbelievably proud of being able to see it out there, and how the stories have shaped things. And my father, who only had the opportunity to go to school through the eighth grade, I started off right with the beginning with a quote from my dad, and he's throughout the book of things he taught me along the way. And as I say in the dedication, my father, Salvatore, is the wisest man I've ever met and I've ever known. And he loves that his isms are, like, the foundation of it. He never thinks of himself that way, but he's absolutely brilliant and
Oh my
really
goodness.
been the
So
foundation of it. So it's been a
you
beautiful.
have to share an ism, a Salvador ism.
Well, I mean, I tell the story of him saying, like, telling me to stop apologizing. So he was trying to teach me. I was trying to try out for the softball team, and I was not athletic. I'm not athletic. And he's teaching me how to play catch, and he kept throwing me the ball. I keep dropping the ball, and he's like, "Christina, stop saying you're sorry. Stop. You're learning to catch the ball. Stop saying you're sorry." And he would constantly tell us to stop apologizing for learning, like, not realizing right at that time, but as I brought to bear in the book, that has been such a foundation and a pillar of my way of thinking and being as a scientist moving forward.
Well, and it's also one of our big strategies, reframe.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. No, you're learning. We're not apologizing
Yes.
for learning. And I extend that to not apologizing for asking questions,
Yes.
right? And like inquiry is our pinnacle form of learning there within. But yeah, so that's been so beautiful to share with them.
Well, that is really wonderful. Thank you, Salvador, for that ism. And also I know that your parents have been on this whole journey with you. So it must be so I mean, just like deeply heartwarming for them to have that out in the world and to give the gift to so many other families and for you to get the recognition you deserve for following your heart and doing it. And you know what? I know we're close to ending and you have to run and do some more teaching. And um, what gives you hope that things will change?
Well, my children, I start with them. They give me hope every day because the way that they ask questions, the way they respond, the way they teach the world to treat their brother, that like I know it's there. I know that the future we want is there. I see it in small interactions in everyday moments and I see it around me. And then the gratitude that comes with as I'm sharing across the book and hearing the stories of what people are doing and what they're carrying forward, I know it's shifting. I know it's changing. And I mean, my gosh, right now in the US, this is a very heavy and challenging time for a lot of us on a lot of different levels in our lives, professionally, personally. Um, and knowing that I'm supporting in sharing strategies that are bringing light, that are calling each other in, that we do have an opportunity and we can shift the way we're doing things so that every child, every family, every community has the opportunity to thrive. And that to me, I feel is a deep blessing that I've had the opportunity to offer.
Well, you certainly are offering them every single day in this podcast through your passion and love. And you give me hope that the things that you find so dear and important and essential in life in terms of the way we look at people will change. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Loved this hour with you. Where can people find you, Chris?
Gosh, so I'm very active on LinkedIn, Facebook, Blue Sky, and you can go to drchrissip.com and to catch up on kind of latest media and opportunities. And I'm currently sharing my book across the country, so there's lots of opportunities to engage if folks are interested.
And I look forward to the idea of your next book, and then you're writing it. I can't wait. Maybe it'll be your kids' books that we will look forward to. But in any case, thank you for sharing yourself. It's really such a gift. And thank you, listeners. I know this has been a really meaningful hour for all of you. Really appreciate your hanging in there with this tough material. It's hard to hear that the world is not giving us what we need and what our children need. And here's Dr. Cipriano telling us how that can happen. So thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you, Robin.
Thanks for joining me for today's episode. I hope you found it helpful and meaningful. If you want to listen to other episodes of the Gaslight Effect Podcast, you can find them at robinstern.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. And please leave a rating and a review. I also invite you to follow me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. I'm so grateful to have many people supporting me, and especially grateful for all of you, my listeners.